My investor partner was negotiating to sell my restaurant to a fast food chain without telling me. I found out because a supplier mentioned something he should not have known. What I found when I started looking was a betrayal built with precision. There are things you build with your hands over years that have an identity that does not fully fit in any legal document. That is not only the name on the facade or the menu on the card or the address on Google Maps. It is the type of carrot you buy at the market on Tuesdays because the farmer from Morelos who grows them has come to know you and to save you the best ones. It is the exact temperature the base preparation broth has to reach before you can add the next element. It is the face of the woman who comes every Friday with her adult daughter and who always orders the same thing, and who, when you change something on the plate, even slightly tells you with the delicacy of someone who trusts you will understand. That has no market price. It does not appear in any valuation a potential buyer can see on a spreadsheet. And yet it was exactly what my investor partner had decided to hand over to a fast food chain. Without asking me, without telling me anything. My name is Rodrigo. I am 38 years old. I am a chef and partial owner of Origin, a seasonal cuisine restaurant with ingredients from local producers that I opened 4 years ago in the Condesa neighborhood with the capital my investor partner put in and the work and vision I provided. The investor partner was named Eduardo. He was 52 years old. He was a businessman with interests in several sectors. He had come to me through a mutual contact who had brought him to dinner and who, after that dinner, had said Eduardo wanted to talk about investment. The conversation had gone well. Eduardo had understood the proposal. He had put in the capital. He had left operations completely in my hands according to what we had agreed. The relationship had worked that way for 4 years. Quarterly meetings, results reports, a relationship I would have described as professional with cordial distance. What I did not know was what Eduardo had been doing in parallel. The supplier who told me something he should not have known was named Don Aurelio. He was the beef distributor I have worked with since I opened the restaurant. He arrived on a Tuesday afternoon to make the week's delivery. And while he was unloading, he mentioned in passing that he had heard we were considering changing the restaurant's concept. I asked him where he had heard that. He told me at a supplier's gathering in the area someone had mentioned that Origin was going to change its name and concept soon. That he had thought I would have told him if that were true, but wanted to ask so as not to be left wondering. I told him I had no plans to change anything. That this was the first time I was hearing something like that. Don Aurelio nodded. He told me fine, that it must have been a misunderstanding. He left, and I stayed in the kitchen with that information settled somewhere that was not going to let me be. I did not call Eduardo immediately. What I did was what I had learned to do when something did not add up: search before reacting. I called 2 people in the sector who had the kind of connections that produce information before it becomes public. Without giving names, without asking direct questions, asking indirectly whether there was anything in the market about Origin. The first person knew nothing. The second took a day to get back to me. When they did, they told me they had heard there were negotiations between an investment fund linked to a fast food chain and a restaurant in the Condesa. That the restaurant was small, but had a good reputation. That the interest was in the location and the brand more than the concept. That the concept would probably change after the acquisition. The location and brand of Origin were exactly what they described. I called our corporate attorney. Her name was Isabel, and she had been handling the legal aspects of the partnership for 4 years. I described what I had heard. I asked her whether in the partnership agreement there was anything that authorized Eduardo to negotiate the sale of his stake or the entire business without my knowledge and without my consent. Isabel reviewed the contract. She told me the contract established that any negotiation for the sale of stakes or the complete business required prior notification to both partners and consent of both to proceed. That if what I was describing was true, Eduardo was acting in direct violation of the partnership agreement. That I needed concrete evidence before any formal move. She told me what the process would be if the evidence confirmed what I suspected. The evidence arrived from where I had not looked for it. Wednesday afternoon, I received an email from someone who identified themselves as a representative of the business development area of a company called Grupo Expansion Capital. The email was addressed to me. It said they were in the process of discussion with one of Origin's partners about a possible acquisition. that they wanted to know my perspective as the operating partner about the business, that they would appreciate a meeting. That email told me two things simultaneously. First, the negotiation was real. Second, Eduardo had not told them I knew nothing about it, or he had told them, and they had decided to contact me anyway as part of their due diligence process. In either case, the negotiation existed, and my name was in it without my having initiated it. I sent the email to Isabel that same Wednesday. Isabel told me that email was exactly the evidence we needed, that the buying company had confirmed in writing the existence of negotiations with one of the partners, that the shareholder agreement was clear about what those negotiations required to be valid, that the process to follow was a formal letter to Eduardo notifying him that I had knowledge of the negotiations and that those negotiations violated the partnership agreement, that letter gave Eduardo the opportunity to explain his position before escalating to legal action, that if he did not respond satisfactorily, the legal options were clear. The letter was sent Thursday. Eduardo responded Friday. He did not deny the negotiations. His position was that he had the right to explore options for his capital, that he had not reached any final agreement, that he had not signed anything, that in his interpretation of the contract, the notification to the other partner was required only when there was a definitive agreement, not during the exploration phase. Isabel responded that interpretation did not correspond to the language of the contract, which was clear about the notification obligation from the start of any negotiation of this nature, that the fact that there was no final agreement did not eliminate the notification obligation, that we were requesting the negotiations stop immediately until both partners had a direct conversation about the future of the partnership. The direct conversation with Eduardo took place the following Tuesday, with Isabel present, with the coldness of two people who know that what exists between them is no longer what it was. Eduardo told me he had been thinking for some time that the investment in Origin was not generating the return he expected, that the niche restaurant market had faced pressure, and that he preferred to capitalize at a moment when the brand still had value, that he had not thought about how it would affect me because he had assumed I would also want to maximize the value of my stake. I asked him whether he had ever thought about telling me he wanted to exit the partnership. He told me yes, that he had not found the right moment. I told him 4 years of partnership deserved at least that conversation before negotiating with third parties the sale of something that was also mine. Eduardo did not respond. What followed was a negotiation for the dissolution of the partnership that lasted 3 months. Eduardo had the right to exit. The contract established the process for that. What he did not have a right to do was negotiate the sale of the entire business to a third party without my consent. Those two things were different, and the process reflected that distinction. Eduardo sold his stake, not to Grupo Expansion Capital, but to a new partner I was able to choose within the process the contract established. The new partner is a chef who has experience in the sector and who understands what Origin is. Origin is still open, with the same concept, with Don Aurelio bringing the meat on Tuesdays, with a Friday woman ordering the same thing, with its identity intact. What cost me most of this entire process was not the legal negotiation or the period of uncertainty. It was processing that Eduardo had been capable of sitting with me in quarterly meetings during the last months while the negotiations were happening, of talking about the restaurant's numbers while in parallel those numbers served as argument in a negotiation I did not know existed. That capacity to compartmentalize, to maintain two simultaneous realities without either bleeding into the other, was the hardest thing to understand. Not the decision to want to exit. The way. What I want you to take from this story has very practical parts for anyone who has or is thinking about having a business partnership. The first, the shareholder agreement or partnership contract is the most important document of your shared business. It has to be clear about what requires the consent of both partners, specifically about transfer of stakes and negotiation of the business's sale. If your contract is ambiguous on those points, the ambiguity will work against you when you most need it. The second, relationships with suppliers, Clients and people in the sector who have information before it becomes public are an information network that can give you early signals of things you do not know are happening. Don Aurelio told me something in passing that changed the course of what would have happened if I had not known. Those relationships have value beyond their transactional function. The third, if your partner wants to exit the partnership, they have the right to do so within the process the contract establishes. That process exists precisely so both parties have protection. When someone bypasses it, they are not only violating the contract, they are violating the possibility of the exit being orderly and fair for both. If this story impacted you, comment. Do you have a clear shareholder agreement that establishes the process when a partner wants to sell their stake, or was that left implicit in trust? Like if you believe small businesses built from passion deserve the same legal protection as large corporations. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who has a business with a partner and who might benefit from reviewing those terms before they become necessary. Practical tip. If you have a business partnership, check that your contract has a right of first refusal clause. The right of a partner to match any offer the other partner receives from a third party before that offer can be accepted. That simple clause protects that no partner can sell their stake to someone the other partner would not choose without giving them the opportunity to make the same offer. It is the most basic control, and in many small partnerships does not exist because it was never thought it would be needed.